Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in sophomore English. We continue in our study of poetry collection number 7 in unit number 4, our poetics unit. I'm with you on page 739. We're going to pick up Carl Sandburg's Jazz Fantasia, and we're going to want to meet Carl Sandburg on page 735. Just to remind, our focus here is on sound devices, and we're going to see a powerful example of this by a great American poet. Notice your dates, 1878 to 1967. Sandburg once observed that some poetry was perfect only in form. Quote, he said, all dressed up with nowhere to go, end quote. In contrast, his own poetry dresses in blue jeans, going everywhere and speaking in the voices of everyday people. Born in Galesburg, Illinois, Sandburg settled for a time in Chicago. In addition to poetry, Sandburg is famous for his biography of Abraham Lincoln. You'll maybe remember in our freshman year, we read a cutting of Sandburg's from his biography of Lincoln. I referenced when I did Johnson's My City, I referenced Sandburg's Chicago, a text that we'll study in our junior year, so you can put that as well at 3A. We're going to turn now to Jazz Fantasia, which is going to celebrate another genre of music that many of my students are sadly not aware of. In the same way that the blues is foundational to understanding American music, so is jazz. What makes jazz, of course, so compelling is the fact that it's so melodic and impromptu at times. Let's see the ways in which Sandburg tries to capture some of the elements of jazz through his poetic attempts. Let's just read and enjoy.
Jazz Fantasia by Carl Sandburg. Drum on your drums, batter on your banjos, sob on the long, cool, winding saxophones. Go to it, oh jazzman. Sling your knuckles on the bottoms of the happy tin pans. Let your trombones ooze. And go hush, hush, hush with the slippery sandpaper. Moan like an autumn wind high in the lonesome treetops. Soft like you wanted somebody terrible. Cry like a racing car slipping away from a motorcycle cop. Bang, bang, you jazzmen. Bang all together, drums, traps, banjos, horns, tin cans. Make two people fight on the top of a stairway and scratch each other's eyes in a clinch, tumbling down the stairs.
740.
Can the rough stuff. Now, a Mississippi steamboat pushes up the night river with a hoo, 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 and the green lanterns calling to the high, soft stars. A red moon rides on the humps of the low river hills. Go to it, oh jazzman.
Now, for those of you that know anything about what today is often referred to as slam poetry, you're seeing an evidence of the birth of slam poetry in many ways in a poem by Carl Sandburg. By the way, he played this game a lot in his poetry, where he could somehow find a way so that when you read the poem several times through, you found yourself wanting to read it the way our professional reader just read it. At first, it sounds kind of maybe hokey and silly. But if you go back and start paying close attention to the way the words are constructed, it naturally gives way to that kind of reading in regards to reading speed. So let's start there at 2B. Notice that in this poem, sometimes you want to read it quickly, sometimes you're going to read it nice and long and slow. In the same way that jazz has this ability to vary its rhythms and therefore kind of captivate the imagination. But the place I want to start at 2B are the verbs, because verbs are words of action. And this is, of course, a poem of action. Notice it begins with the verb drum. But then notice the first verb at the second stanza, sling. Then the third stanza, moan. Go all the way through this poem and study the power of a verb to elicit a certain kind of a response. Notice that this poem then is going to try to capture in language the power of jazz rhythmic intensity. Of course, at the same time, celebrating the jazz musicians who were so influential in Sandburg's own day as jazz was beginning to reach its heyday, culminating probably with the great Miles Davis, the greatest of all jazz musicians. All right, let's jump to 2A really quickly and ask about a possible message here. Some have said that this is a great tribute poem, not to an individual, but to a group of individuals, jazz musicians. And of course the jazz as a genre itself, that music that can somehow capture emotions so beautifully, so powerfully. Of course, it's an ensemble, often, kind of music as well. You have a multiplicity of musicians all playing somehow together. That word syncopated is, of course, a powerful way to think about it as well. Let's think, though, at 2B. What makes this poem so interesting? Just look at the second stanza. Sling your knuckles on the bottoms of the happy tin pans, let your trombones ooze and go hush-a, hush-a, hush with the slippery sand paper. The power, of course, of that rhythm that is able to provide us. The assonance, the consonance that's there, makes it work so nicely. Notice trombones ooze. Did you hear that? Did you hear that repetition of that sound that makes it so beautiful? And then, of course, those hard S sounds, slippery sand paper. That S sounds, allowing then for the sound of what in jazz drums, that sound. Notice he's able to capture it with that hard S sibilant sound. Again, it's not just what is it, but how does it work that makes Sandburg, and of course we would say as well in Weary Blues, Langston Hughes capable of doing that. And so, since we're there, let's jump to 3A. Jump down really quickly. How does jazz Fantasia and Weary Blues work as companion reads? Both of them, of course, having something to do with a certain style or genre of music. So jot down, how does that work for you? Finally, at 3B, what is your relationship to jazz? Is it a form of music? I said Miles Davis. Are you at all familiar with the work of Miles Davis? If you're not, you may want to try and run down some music of Miles Davis and just listen to it. Blue and Green comes to mind immediately as a suggestion for you. What is your, another 3B style question, what is your favorite style of music? And now I hope I'm not going to insult you by asking, how much do you actually know of the history of that music? Like where it came from? You may know, for example, country music and really like it, and you have a certain musical artist right now that you listen to. But who are the antecedents, musical antecedents, those who came before, that inform so much of the birth of the style of music that you like? I have students that listen to what at least once we called rap music, but they don't know often a lot of the older rap artists, the ones who invented originally so much of rap music. And whether we're talking East Coast, West Coast, or Southern rap, they don't know about it at all. They are unfamiliar with it. It makes sense to maybe do a bit of research. Learn more about the things you love so that you can, again, appreciate it at a whole nother level in compelling ways. I hope you enjoyed Sandburg's offering. Thank you.